The microphone hissed, a sharp crackle like thunder slashing through velvet. The cameras clicked in a frantic staccato, 1,000 eyes hidden behind glass lenses. The air in the packed auditorium was thick, stale with anticipation, adrenaline, and a faint scent of old wood polish and cologne. On the stage, beneath the golden floodlights, John Kennedy Jr. stood, tall, composed, almost mythic. His tailored navy suit clung to his frame like armor, and the faintest hint of sweat glistened at his temple. Though his voice remained calm, deliberate, every syllable carving into the silence like a sculptor's chisel. He was halfway through a sentence about unity. "We don't need more walls of ideology," when it happened. Gavin Newsom, flanked by two aides who looked visibly alarmed, rose from his seat in the third row and strode to the stage like a man with a grenade in his chest. Every eye turned. The cameras snapped. John paused, his brow tightening in confusion. "I'm sorry, John," Newsom said, loud, unflinching, and very public. "But you're wrong." 8 seconds. That was the time it took for the weight of the interruption to crash down. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, haunted, the kind of silence where hearts race and people forget to breathe. Kennedy didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stood there, silent, still, as if trying to decide whether to fight, flee, or listen. And all at once, the past came rushing in. John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. had never asked to inherit the ghost of a father he barely remembered. He was just 3 when the bullets stole President Kennedy from a world, and from him. Yet the photos of the young boy saluting the casket followed him through every stage of his life. To millions, he was a symbol, a memory, a story that refused to end. But John had wanted to write his own story. He studied law at NYU, but politics pulled at him like gravity. He was charming, yes, but it was more than that. He carried that rare blend of vision and vulnerability. He didn't just want to lead, he wanted to heal. After decades of growing cynicism, he believed America needed not just new ideas, but a new spirit. And so, in a twist of fate history seemed almost to conspire toward, John announced his candidacy for president in the summer of 2024. Gavin Newsom, meanwhile, had built his career in California with ferocity, ambition, and a dash of rebellion. He was slick, sharp-tongued, and decisive, traits that earned him both praise and scorn. He fought for climate reform, housing equity, and tech accountability. But beneath the confident exterior, there was a restlessness, a fear he would always be seen as a West Coast governor with a national ego, a man with unfinished business. So when John's candidacy surged in popularity, Gavin's team was divided. Some urged him to run, others told him to wait. But in his heart, Gavin knew, if he didn't take a shot now, it might never come again. Their lives had orbited the same sun, politics, legacy, reform, but on opposite ends of the spectrum. And now, for the first time, their orbits collided. Not in a debate hall, not in a policy memo, but right here in the flesh. Back on the stage, John Kennedy Jr. looked at Gavin Newsom not with anger, but with an aching sort of disappointment. Not because he'd been interrupted, but because he understood what the interruption meant. He stepped back from the podium. The silence stretched until it snapped. "I wondered when this would happen," John finally said, his voice lower, tinged with sadness. The room stirred. Gavin, eyes locked on him, said, "You're selling poetry in a burning house. The country doesn't need nostalgia, it needs leadership." A hush swept across the crowd. John stepped forward, but not to retaliate. Instead, he gestured toward the second row, where his wife, Carolyn, sat with their 10-year-old son, Jack. Carolyn had aged gracefully, radiant and grounded, always his anchor. Jack clutched a small notebook in his lap, unaware of the storm brewing on stage. John spoke, slow and steady. "Gavin, I respect what you've done, but don't mistake idealism for naivety. You think I want to relive the 1960s? I want to finish what my father started and what we forgot along the way." Behind the scenes, 2 subplots were unfolding like quiet shadows. One involved Emma Vargas, a 29-year-old Latina journalist covering the campaign for a progressive podcast. She'd grown up in a border town, the daughter of undocumented immigrants, and she didn't trust legacies, especially not ones wrapped in Camelot. But John's campaign speeches had moved her. She began to question if politics could still be a vessel for good. But after witnessing Gavin's outburst, she faced a personal dilemma. Report the disruption as a scandal or as a moment of truth. Her editor wanted clicks. Emma wanted clarity. The other story followed Marcus Flynn, a Vietnam vet and Kennedy loyalist who had volunteered for John's campaign out of respect for the father. But Marcus carried more than admiration. He carried guilt. 50 years ago, Marcus had been recruited into the CIA-backed operation that indirectly fueled foreign policy failures under JFK. Now, supporting the son was his penance. When he saw Newsom confront John, old wounds opened. Was history repeating or rewriting? Back in the spotlight, Kennedy looked out at the crowd. He didn't see voters. He saw people, frustrated, hopeful, tired. "Gavin, I understand your urgency," John said. "We're all standing in smoke. But we need to remember why we built the house in the first place. You want fire extinguishers. I want to rebuild the foundation." Gavin hesitated. For a moment, the polished governor seemed human, unsure. There was something in Kennedy's eyes, not pride, but pain, a kind of knowing. And then, without a word, Newsom stepped back, nodded once, and returned to his seat. The auditorium erupted, not with applause, but with something deeper. A collective exhale, a recognition that they'd just witnessed something rare. Two leaders confronting the raw heart of their ambition. In the days that followed, Emma published a piece titled "The 8-Second Pause," when politics held its breath. It didn't vilify Gavin or canonize John. It explored what it meant to listen, to pause, and to allow space for disagreement without destruction. Marcus, meanwhile, sent a letter to John, one he'd written 20 years earlier but never mailed. In it, he apologized for the sins of his generation. John replied with a single sentence, "The past doesn't define us, but we do owe it our honesty." The campaign moved forward. Kennedy didn't win every debate or every state, but he had something else, something harder to earn. Trust. Not because he was perfect, but because he was willing to be interrupted, to wait, to speak again, not in anger, but with resolve. Gavin continued his journey too, refined, humbled. He joined forces with John on a bipartisan climate initiative. They didn't always agree, but they listened. And maybe that's the lesson. In a world addicted to sound bites and rage, sometimes the most powerful thing a leader can do is sit in silence for 8 seconds and then speak with the full weight of history, humanity, and hope behind him. And maybe, just maybe, that's how change begins.